All right.
Welcome into Shaping Reality for September 2024. How did we get here already? Oh my gosh, I am so excited that all of you are here. And of course, I'm joined by Penny Kelly. Penny, how are you tonight?
Hi, I'm great. It's good to be home.
Wonderful. You've been traveling.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I went to Colorado and did a segment for Gaia TV.
You did. I didn't know that. I just got goosebumps. Tell us a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. The conversation with Rebecca or Regina Meredith. And so I drove out there. It was a long drive, very interesting going across country and coming back. Very powerful experience, and I've done that dozens of times, but it was powerful this time. There's just so many perceptions that I had on the way out, and it was fun. I stayed at this magnificent hotel. Oh my. It was a St. Julian Hotel and Spa, and it was fancy.
Oh,
So I said to somebody, I felt so frumpy when I got there because, everybody's dressed to the teeth and dripping with gold and all kinds of people, talking passionately on their cell phones and wearing these fancy sports clothes. And there I am in my tennis shoes and my jeans and my old shirt. So
but you were glowing. I'm sure you were
I don't
glowing.
know. Yeah, it was really fun. It was a great experience, and I'm hoping that at some point I can implement some of those perceptions that I had coming back across the country. So,
Okay, well, maybe we can have a little discussion about that because I'd be interested in hearing about that. I'm sure other people would too.
okay, yeah, I have always had a dream when I was younger that I was going to fly the world and become a stewardess, and then when I was done stewardessing, I was going to be a doctor and travel and live in places for a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe only 6 months, and heal people, but write about that culture in that little place, wherever it was. And, I didn't fit any other criteria for the stewardess, so that went out the window. And then with 4 little kids, a woman on her own, on welfare to boot, is not going to make it through medical school. So that went out the window. But the writing that did not go out the window. And so I was thinking, it's not too late to live in a few places, build bridges, write about those people and their culture and how they live and what they have learned and what they have to share. So that's was some of the thinking, and it was great. It was really it it was a shock in some ways to see how empty the western half of the United States is. It's empty. I mean, there's a few cities here and there. It's like, but population of Crescent City, 650. Next town is 50 miles away. And it was really a very interesting experience. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I heard today that humans don't dream big enough.
Yes.
And it makes me, that brought it up when you saw your story, you wanted to be a healer. And so you wanted to heal in these little locations. Well, look at you, you're healing thousands of people around the world. So maybe you
Well,
weren't
yeah.
dreaming big
Okay.
enough.
Yeah. From my little corner of the world in Southwest Michigan, it'll have to do. And it does do very well. So
Mhm.
I have no complaints. It was really nice to be home and to be having all that juice from all those travel perceptions and experiences. It's like it's enough to keep me going for months and months. So,
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Welcome home. You know where I'd like to start tonight, and we discussed this before we came on, is what
okay.
happens when humans on a planet in countries realize that their government is not their government and they're no
Yeah.
longer a trustworthy
Yeah.
organization that we're funding and we're supporting and we're voting for, and we realize the whole thing's a
I
sham.
know. Yeah. I know. That is so sad. In some ways, it's terrible. In other ways, it's like, ooh, what an opportunity. So brings us right around to us.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think, I would imagine, and my guess would be is that most people that are watching this particular video right now are
Yeah.
aware that their government is not what we were taught or not what we
Yep.
were raised to believe.
Yep.
And I know for me, at least, it's been kind of like that peeling the onion thing. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
okay, I knew they were sort of, corrupt, and maybe somebody pocketed $100 here or there. And
Right.
now it's like I think, "Oh my gosh, they all belong in prison for life."
I know.
So the trajectory or the journey from thinking, "Oh, there's a little bit of, backdoor handshaking and a little money being changed hands," to
Right.
finding out that these people really are fleecing their citizens and
Yeah.
completely disregarding any will of the people and are just like I think I said it last month.
Yeah.
It's like riding in a car, it's a bunch of kids riding in a car with a drunk mother.
Oh, yep.
We're being taken for a horrible ride. So I guess the question I wanna ask is, once you realize that there's a process, and the process is, first of all, you have to accept it, you have to understand it, and then you have to move into something different
I know.
as a human.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to become a new human. So that's actually what I want to talk about is how do you do that? What are the steps? What do you have to, what changes within you? That's a big deal when you have to come face to face with yourself and you've lost respect for your government. You realize they aren't trustworthy and they aren't somebody that's going to be there for you. And that's, I mean, where does that leave us? Um, that's a big issue. So if you have to face yourself as now you're the government, you're the one making the decisions, you're the one deciding, you're the one that has to be the provider, looking ahead, the planning, what's right, what's wrong, how should I go about this or that? All of those kinds of decisions. You have to be your own boss in many ways, your own teacher. Um, you have to be your own banker. All of those things, your own decider in chief. And that really changes what I'm going to say is your tolerance for people who aren't good. When you have to make all those decisions yourself and you're trying to do what's right, and then along comes some clown and is not honorable, not honest, and you know that you're being fleeced and you're being lied to and you're being cornered in such a way that you're under attack. That's people lose their patience very quickly. So,
That what that brings up for me is the Old West.
oh yeah,
There was no tolerance, for anybody coming into town, any nonsense, you're gonna get shot by the sheriff pretty darn quick.
right.
So,
Yeah,
I have a couple of questions about that. Well, first of all, if we're talking about becoming a new human,
yeah,
my first question is, Earth humans, Homo sapiens sapien, we're just one of many iterations of people or human in the cosmos. And,
yeah.
once you get that, you go, "Oh, okay, well, we're a breed." We're, like a Maltese, and this one's over there is a Pomeranian, and this one.
Okay, yeah,
So,
right.
when you say becoming a new human,
Mhm.
are we talking about this iteration of human? Is it an absolute new creation, or are we becoming more like a more advanced civilization?
We're becoming a more advanced civilization, and the more you live that, the more your DNA changes. Now, DNA changes slowly, but the progression is really very distinct. And there are technologies that can evolve you quickly. But that we really, I think we want to become people who are comfortable in 3D, but not limited to 3D, who are centered in 4D, but who are also able to move into 5D and maintain that higher consciousness, because of the whole different set of commitments to behavior, commitments to thinking, commitments to allowing certain emotions and watching, paying attention so that you see what's coming, so that nothing catches you and traps you. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's a watchfulness that comes and it brings maturity as well. And that prevents you from getting into those terrible, emotional, overreactive, immature, selfish, greedy, stupid kinds of reactions that a lot of people will have down in 3D. You just are paying attention enough and present enough that you don't get into those situations.
Right, because you would not make the decisions or the choices to be put
Right.
in that situation to have it. It's just to me, it sounds like a greater level of not only awareness, but just maturity and personal responsibility.
Yeah.
You become much more responsible for your thoughts, for
Yeah.
your choices, for your actions. One question I have is you talk about someone who's comfortable in 3D, but can also work in 4D, and then someone in 4D that can also work in 5D. I know that I cannot tell. I think I'm in 3D. Maybe there's sometimes I'm really peaceful and I'm dipping into 4D, but the only way that I would be able to say I might be there is because I just feel so peaceful or, kind of a joyful peacefulness.
Okay.
How
Yeah.
would a person know when they're changing in levels or
It's
dimensions?
that really comes down to the consciousness that we maintain. If you are in we're all in 3D right now, you know, it's just the way it is. And yet many people have shifted their allegiances, their behaviors, their values, their ethics up a notch or two. And when enough people do that, and then you have a collapse of the government, or of the cultural system that you're in, that group that has shifted up, has an impact on the kind of culture, the kind of governance, the kind of money, the kind of education, the kind of agriculture and science and all that stuff that is going to be created to replace the failed culture or the culture that fell down.
Yeah.
So it's really a slow process. And I used to really complain. It's like, well, come on. Well, let's get this, move it to 4D. It's like, no. You have to live it in order to prove to yourself mostly and to others that you're not going to go along with corruption. You're not going to go along with immaturity. You're not going to go along with greed or with win-lose kinds of deals. So you're not interested let's say you're a farmer, you're not interested in spraying poisons all over everything because it destroys the earth, bugs, animals, and eventually us. So that's the kind of thing. If you're a banker, it's the same thing. No, you're not going to allow deals that rip off the people that you hold their money. And there's all sorts of minor, well, they're not so minor, but they're small, easy to make commitments that we then live. And the result gradually is the emergence of a culture that operates at a higher level and a
Okay.
much
I
more powerful level.
Okay, I have a question here in regards to trying to bring all the information together that we've been talking about for the past several months.
Um,
You know, what what we're coming to the final stages of, and like we said earlier, it's all over but the shouting as
Yeah,
far as the takeover plan.
I know.
So there is a collective, a civilization, a people who wanted to take over Earth and control humanity.
Right.
And the word on the street that I get is that whereas they're very technologically advanced, they're not necessarily
Spiritually.
spiritually advanced or mature.
Right.
So my question now is why how does that happen? Because we're being called here on earth
Yeah.
to become more spiritually mature. Nobody's focusing on, let's make sure we build the biggest rockets and can get a Earthship out there that we can fit 50,000 people on. That's not the
Right.
focus. The focus is, who are you as a person? Where's your personal power? Where's your
Right.
consciousness? So what's the difference between that collective, very technologically advanced, and the request or the the
Yep.
encouragement for us to become more spiritually advanced?
Okay. So what is more spiritually advanced? What is spirit in essence?
Consciousness, energy,
Oh, energy. It's energy. So when you become more spiritual, what are you learning to pay attention to? The
energy.
en the energy behind all of the actions, the decisions, the words, the relationships, the technology, the tools. You're paying attention to the energy behind that. And the propaganda, the sales job that comes along with a lot of that stuff in our world, you begin to recognize that as a sales job for somebody to make money, period. There's no other gain. There's no other benefit. And I'm not against making money, but there has to be it has to be win-win. And that includes more than just, let's say, you and the guy you're making a deal with. It includes you and the planet and your neighbors and the soil and the birds and the animals and everybody. Everybody. Is it a win for everybody? So, when you said, you asked a really important question, how does it happen that we end up in a mess like this? It happens when people are ignorant, when they are kept young and immature, and they're distracted. And there was something that I read while I was traveling that really struck home, and it was a very small number of people can absolutely take over a huge number of people as long as the huge number of people are ignorant.
Yeah.
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 As soon as they wake up, game's over. It's
Mhm.
done. And we have been hearing this thing about waking up for how long now? Well, for me, it's been for 45 years, but
Yeah.
for most people, it's been over the last 4 or 5 years. And even then, before that, there was talk, but it was all kind of sloughed off into the category of, oh, conspiracy theory. And nobody really understands that there's only 2 theories of history of action. One is it's accident, the other is it's thought out and planned. And the plan is the conspiracy. So, either we are a bunch of accidental fools that just happen to have a few good days, or there's some planning going on.
Yeah,
And
I heard something yesterday, it blew my mind. It was a discussion about the Sumerian tablets,
oh,
and that the gentleman who first cracked the code, because there's no other language like that, so you can't contrast and compare, you have to actually start from 0. He
oh,
cracked the code back in the late 1800s, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, what an incredibly effective dumbing down program
yeah,
that we've had that information on the planet for over a century,
yeah, right.
and it's just now becoming something that people here
Oh,
and there are talking about and bringing up. So,
yeah,
what an effective program of dumbing us down, and I can still remember, Penny, when you talked to me, and gosh, it's been like 2 years now, and you said, by age 12, a human should be able to survive on this planet on their own,
Right,
out on the out in the wilderness, food,
right.
water, shelter, the whole thing, and I was just gobsmacked because that thought was so
Almost.
outside of what was the norm that I was raised in.
Oh, yeah.
And what I realize now is the level of programming we've had is just extraordinary. I mean, so much more so than you would even think when you
Yeah,
start looking at it starts so early and is so pervasive.
yeah, yeah, it does, and we infantilize our children until they're in their 20s and sometimes their 30s.
Yeah.
We baby them, and that's doesn't do them a favor, and it doesn't do us a favor either. So
No.
here we are.
And it's not just infantilizing our kids. There's this big thing out right now, and you probably don't know about it because you're not in that world, but there's these companies that put together these meal boxes and they send
What?
them they send them to your house with directions, and you pull out all the ingredients and you make this meal. And I'm thinking,
Oh,
oh, now we're infantilizing people to the level of they can't even gather the ingredients for their meals anymore.
whoops. Yeah. Oh,
So that's what I'm talking about, the level of programming and
mhm.
keeping us dumbed down
Yeah, they
is
call it making life convenient, but it's really only convenient for them. So, puts money in their pocket and keeps us stupid.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. So this new human, is this a new iteration of people, of a person, or is this something I mean, it must be exciting for people from other reality systems to be watching us because
Yeah,
humans are so extraordinary and we're so physically
right.
resilient. And if
Yeah.
you take all those qualities, including these really great bodies,
Yep.
and you advance them, that's got to bring everything to a new level.
Yeah, it does. I think back sometimes to when I got severe rheumatoid arthritis. I couldn't walk. I couldn't sit. I couldn't bend. I couldn't pick up. I couldn't hold anything. Um, and the mindset that went with that, oh, you know, oh, poor me. And go to the doctor, and she writes me a prescription and says, "Nothing can be done. You're just gonna have to
Mhm.
take these pills." And my response to that was, "Hell too. I didn't have this last year. What happened?" And
Yeah.
that started that whole journey. And, oh my, I get all choked up just thinking about it. But as I changed my mindset, my body changed. My consciousness changed. My expectations changed. My capacities of consciousness changed. And I was already involved in Kundalini big time. And that was a huge opening right there to another level. So when you become a new human, you actually have different food, you have different chemistry, you have different sleep schedule, you're willing to exercise, you're willing to sweat. The little things in life are just huge delights, huge. All of life becomes this treasure, and that's part of, not the whole thing, but it's part of the first steps to becoming a new human is getting healthy. And the healthier you get, the more you see, the more you know, the more you understand, the more you realize it starts with, for me, it was like, wow, there's no nutrition in the food. I'd never thought about nutrition and what did the body need until I needed to rebuild. And then, how do you manage this thing that we are, this amazing system? And then realizing that I have this consciousness. I can impact what's happening with just using this consciousness and just using it to go into the grocery store and read labels, just stand there in the aisles and read labels, looking for something that didn't have sugar in it. And there was no such thing. Everything had sugar in it. So then realizing, oh, I have to find food elsewhere. Oh my, I have to get food that's, or I call it raw. It hasn't been prepared for me. And oh my gosh, now I need new tools in the kitchen. Oh, I need new equipment. I need to think ahead a little more because, you don't soak beans and cook them and eat them 5 minutes before your dinner time. You have to be thinking a day ahead, and it just becomes a habit. And that it changes everything about your perception. If you start in any sector, and for me, it was in the sector of health, but any sector, government is a big shake up, wake up kind of force right now for a lot of people. Science has been a big disappointment for a lot of people. The whole financial world, that has been a wake up call. Doesn't matter where you start, but once you start seeing beyond the curtain, everything changes. And now you begin to realize that it's all connected. And if you're going to become a new human, you don't really fit in that world. It isn't an honorable world. And it doesn't deserve to be continued because too many people are hurting. And that becomes one of your criteria. You don't want to hurt. And eventually, you don't want to see anybody else hurt either. And you're not willing to just stand by and do nothing when people are hurting. And so you do what you can. And so it starts that new human transformation, which is a process. And it's a slow process. It's easy. Let me say it this way. It's easier if it's slower. If it hits like Kundalini for me, whoa. I mean, that's not slow. That was an incredible wake-up call right there, just with what's wrong with my consciousness, what is happening with my perception, why am I seeing that, what the hell is that, et cetera, et cetera. But eventually you put it all together, and what you realize is, oh, if we really want a new world, we have to become a new human, because you can't make the same old choices and get a new world. It doesn't go together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that you have outlined the steps of becoming a new human. Did you want to go over them with us? Just kind of recap so we can
I'd be happy to share this. I got these from my book, The Revival. And so this is, hang on a second. So there's, I make a couple of sentences and then I just put the list out there. But so humanity, I think, humanity is the heart of it all. It's where the family, the friends, the work, the governance, the religion, the education, science, business, health, money, and everything is connected right into the heart of humanity. We are such valuable beings. We are amazing beings. So what I tell people is take a minute to go around the map. I have a map a couple pages earlier. And just ask yourself, what would you need to keep in mind if you are trying to revive yourself and create a new world, a new reality, a new lifestyle? Start small. I mean, just changing your own lifestyle is huge. That's not so small, but don't try to change the world. Change yourself first. So, and the thing that I think is so important, and this was what I was aware of driving across the country, we need one another.
Yeah, I
Holy
was just
cow.
going to say that. Yeah, this is not an individual thing.
No,
I don't think humans can exist on this planet unless they work together.
that's right. Oh my gosh. And I was aware as I was coming across the country, because I had this dream of living in West Kansas, far West Kansas. And I'm driving across, on I-70, and I'm looking at how open, I'm loving it. And then I'm realizing, oh my God, there's, thousands of acres here with one little farm in the middle of those acres. And that family is entirely self-sufficient. They fix their own equipment, they grow their own food, they manage their own money, they build their own houses and their own structures, they handle their animals, they heal themselves. Maybe they go to church on Sunday, etc. But the self-sufficiency level that you have to have in order to live all alone out in the middle of 10,000 acres of corn is huge. And I realized, maybe I don't want to live in the far west Kansas. I
Right.
want, I'd like something a little more populated. But I love that openness, and that opens your mind as well. Those open spaces. It reminded me of looking out of the ships that I've been on and seeing the cosmos, seeing this. Wow!
Must be
Just
so beautiful.
it is. It's an
Yeah.
amazing. It's kind of like a
Yeah, jaw dropping.
right. Yeah. So I always tell people, start by being aware that we need one another. Absolutely need one another.
Okay,
And
can I interject real quick
yeah,
here? Because I want to contrast and compare where we are now with where we're going. And
okay.
so if we take that family, Penny in Kansas, that
Yeah.
is on this, I don't know, 100-acre farm, or I don't know how big it is.
Usually 5,000 acres.
5,000-acre farm. So you take the skill set of that family, and that not only their skill set, but their position in life. Their
Right.
we take care of ourselves position, and then they do. And then you contrast that to someone living in a city who takes public transportation and gets DoorDash for dinner, and they work in a company in a cubicle, and their
right.
health insurance, they go down to the med center and do what the doctor tells them to do. The skill set and the sense of self between those two is so different.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I think that the person that lives on the acreage in Kansas is going to be a more well-rounded human than the person living in the city, or have a broader skill set for existing on the planet. So then becomes, so if we know we need each other, we need
Yeah.
cooperation. How do we stop it before we get to the place where we're having people stuffed into cities and they're completely, their skill set is so
Oh.
thin? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like
Well, how do we stop what? How do we stop moving to cities, or how do we stop living in cities?
So the progression was, we all lived alone on our, in our log cabins, and and then they, the Industrial Revolution, and they come to the city, we'll give you a job and you won't have to
Yeah.
work from dawn till dusk anymore.
That's
So
right.
people came to the cities and they gave up their land.
Yeah.
That was a cooperative thing, but, unfortunately, cooperative in the wrong direction. So if we break everything down and we start cooperating again in a more communal way,
Right.
how do we stop it from people becoming too dependent on the system?
I think one of the great joys of life is running into or becoming aware that you're pretty capable, that you could survive most things, that you could fix most things, that you could generate most of what you needed, and pretty much take care of yourself. So that's a joy that we haven't heard about. That joy. What we've heard about is the joy of a big fat paycheck, a month of vacation. I'm like, a month of a year, that's all you get is one. Most people only get 2 weeks, if that. And those are the kinds of joys, the fancy car, the clothes, the jewelry, all that stuff. And those are some joys. But when it comes to the need to form a new society, those things are not they aren't the main thing. The main thing is really your connections with other people. Can you work with people? Are you cooperative? Do you have a skill that you could contribute, or several skills? And that, when it comes to, like, let's use leaving the city versus going into cities. When it comes to um, how do we stop people from going into the cities, we don't really want to stop them. We just want to make sure that within that city, they don't give up their attention to their skills, the development of skills, whatever that is. Leadership, that's a skill all by itself. And when it comes to people leaving the city, then we would want to make sure that there would have to be some sort of interim steps. Move to a smaller city, maybe move to then to a large town, maybe a college town, because there's a lot of energy around college towns, and then maybe a smaller town. But I kept thinking about, oh my gosh, I hope people in the cities don't leave the cities and run to small towns that are very tight in terms of who they know, etc. And that really would be disastrous for them, I think, because they
Yeah.
wouldn't know how to fit in, and they wouldn't have anything to contribute, and they need time. We need to have some stepping stones, to create some places where skills are taught and people are invited in, new people. When I moved here to Lawton, people thought I was coming from the city. So they were kind of standoffish. They didn't know I, came from another farm across the state. But there was a welcoming committee, and they welcomed us and baked me a loaf of bread and a bunch of stuff like that. And I thought, oh, wow, very nice. That kind of thing has died, at least around here.
But my perception of why people are attracted to the city life, my perception, my opinion, is all based on false goals, or those indoctrinated goals, or those program goals.
Right.
Nobody needs a $100,000 car. Nobody needs a $50,000 watch. And yet that's what, we've been raised to get the stuff instead of become our true selves. And as we move forward, and I see it, I see people, even people who would say, I would say are not necessarily really awake and aware of what's going on, they're starting to kick back. They're getting a little
I've noticed
sassy.
that.
I've noticed that too. And they're not just being as easily led.
That's
So
right.
my thought is that if everything comes crashing down, do we really want cities?
Yeah.
And
I
will we even have them, or will they become ghost towns and people start forming these loose sort of little
yeah,
communal associations? And you bring, maybe they say, well, we need that. Why don't you come in and join us, and that sort of thing? Or there's an interview process or something, and you kind of
right.
join in the community.
Yeah. Yeah. When I've gone, like, well, I move ahead in time and go looking, just curious. So when I go like 1,000 years ahead, um, the big focus of people on planet Earth is really where I think we should be going, which is toward the development of our powers,
Yeah.
our consciousness. When I get out there, like 2,000 years about 2,000 years. What I see is that there are still cities, but man, everything is different. Everything, the way people work, there's no wars. That I thought was amazing. And people still live in big groups. But some of those cities are really, you can't just move into them. You can't, they're very well controlled. They're very well organized. When I get out there 5,000 years, there's no cities. There's none.
Oh. Okay, and
None.
what is the
Like
what
we
does the
see,
Earth look like? What does the planet look like? Is it
it
healed?
looks like it's really, yeah, the water is clean. The forests have
Mhm.
mostly all grown back. You can find, you know how we go digging around in the jungles and we see, oh, there's some ruins here. That's pretty much what we see or what I've seen when I've gone ahead like 4 or 5,000 years. The remains of the cities are, you'll see some glass, some broken glass. You'll see like pottery sheds. We have broken glass instead of broken pottery. You'll see cement basements or um, some of the steel beams, a lot of the steel beams even have started to deteriorate, but just the remains. It's like a few skeletons of big, big, big buildings. And that's it. So, and people, there's not as many people. And my thinking at the time was, oh, they all died. No, they didn't. They moved to another dimension. They moved up or they moved to other planets where there was a higher consciousness, what do you call it, civilization and culture. So they went elsewhere. And it wasn't a big tragedy. And I've been amazed by that. So it's, we're not done unfolding ourselves. We're just starting, in fact.
Yeah,
We're just beginning.
yeah.
Yeah, so let me go through the list and interrupt me if you want, okay?
Mhm.
Um, so life in 3D reality can be really fierce, but it teaches some really powerful lessons in a sequence of steps. And the steps go like this. This is becoming a new human. First, you have to be recognized by others enough to affirm that you exist, okay? So if nobody wants you, you're going to curl up and into a little ball and say, I'm out of here. So you have to be recognized by others. Second, the best way to earn recognition is to be good to others. Their appreciation then comes to you as recognition and gratitude. And the gratitude is like a little bonus in our pocket. It's like, oh, somebody likes me. Somebody's glad I'm alive. And number three is as you are recognized by others, you learn to identify and recognize yourself. And right there, you have a step toward becoming a little more self sufficient consciousness wise. Now, you know, if you have a baby and the mother dies and the baby just sits in an orphanage all day, that baby is likely to die as well.
Yeah.
Um, so the goal is to become able to recognize yourself. And when you look around our planet and look at the people in our culture, people are trying to get attention everywhere. Why? Because they need recognition in order to learn to recognize themselves. So the attention thing is a need. It's sometimes it's pathological. We have a lot of psychopaths and sociopaths in our culture running our culture right now. But the goal is to become self-sufficient at self-recognition. Well, then number four, the more you recognize yourself, the more present you become to everything happening around you. And what happens there is that your ego is that part of you that's watching. You know, it's looking to make sure you're safe. It is it's like your guard that is early warning system. Watch out, you know, that's dangerous, or she's dangerous, or he's not to be trusted, or what. That's that intuitive self that they call the ego, and they're always trying to, you know, make you feel guilty about your ego. You need that ego, and I've said that many times. So the more you become present, now you're watching and you're paying attention to what's going on at all the levels. Now that ego falls to the background and you become very aware. That's the gift right there. So the more present you become, the more you begin to tinker with ways of exploring power and the ability to make a difference. So the goal here is to move people to their power. That's really what it's about. You have power. You are a powerhouse in your own consciousness. There is nothing that is as powerful as consciousness. Nothing. So, so you become present, and then pretty soon you start to say, gee, I hope there's a parking spot outside the grocery store. Or, I hope I can make that left turn when I get to that corner where there's always such terrible traffic. Or, I hope I can do something about this problem I'm having with my foot or my leg or my hip or whatever. You start to tinker with your own self, and you start to explore your own power. So then the more you explore power, the more you discover it's there for you to use. And that's where you run into your fear. Like, oh, what if I misuse it? What if I do something bad? And so people have to use power. They have to get comfortable with it. And you will fear your own power. And then, of course, the powers that want to be, they're gonna encourage you to fear your own power. Okay, because they don't want you using that power. But the more you use power, the more you are forced to make a conscious alignment with life or with death.
Yep.
So that's where there's only two choices, good or bad. Or some people will say good or evil. Or some people will say life or death. Your brain is only wired for two things, pleasure and pain. And good and evil are the two versions of pleasure and pain that most people get. They get that from religion, but that's all you're wired for. Pleasure is to get you to move toward it. Pain is to get you to move away from it. So the more you use power, the more you're forced to make a conscious alignment with life or with death. You're going to hurt people. You're going to cheat people. You're going to talk nasty about people or not. It becomes a conscious thing. So the more you practice making choices in alignment with life, the more self-sustaining you become. And what you enter into there is, I like to call it the lifelong education. You become your own lifelong educator. Everything is open. Doesn't matter how old you are. Like, yeah, I want to learn that. So, I know somebody who decided they wanted to become an electrician, and she did at 60 some years of age. I'm like, holy cow.
It's a high risk career.
Yeah, it is.
Melt your feelings.
Yeah. So the more self-sustaining you become, the more you start to step in and out of the realms of the eternal. Okay? And you start to meet those who have discovered the secrets of immortality. So, now you're becoming a different kind of human blatantly inside yourself. So, and how you really have to handle that wisely so you don't look like a kook. You still have to navigate all the dimensions with grace and a sense of humor. Let's have a little fun. Let's laugh at that. Better that than cry. So you discover the secret of immortality, and the closer you get to immortality, the more you realize that this is the end state of humanity. That's what we are designed to become. It is the ability to self-sustain and continue to create. And what do you self-sustain? Yourself. And what do you create? Yourself. Over and over and over every single morning when you wake up, you are responsible for recreating yourself fresh and new that day. Don't be taking yourself down. So the earth, her people, and the societies we form are really wonderful places to learn and practice the habits that lead to the full unfolding of a human being. And the big problem with a lot of people who um, the when you look at the history, did we talk about this before? The history of Time Magazine and the
No.
focus of Time Magazine. About 35 years ago, Time Magazine started publishing a special edition for people in the United States. Different, vastly different from what was being published everywhere else in the world. Everywhere else in the world, Time Magazine was talking about really important issues, pithy subjects, topics, what was happening in the world, what was being fed to the American people. A whole bunch of psychological crap. You need to be aware that if you had a bad mother, you probably are handicapped for life. You can't figure out that you will never, you can't, you won't, you are lost. And I had an array, I think I still have it on my computer, of all of the front covers of Time Magazine for like 25 or 30 years and that were published in the US, and all of the front covers of Time Magazine that were published elsewhere in the world. And the difference is stunning. And what you see is that we were just being led right down, ringing the nose kind of thing, down the path of only focusing on the psychological issues and not dealing with anything going on that needed to be dealt with. And so that really was a disservice to the whole, population of the U.S.
Now, wait a minute. I would not use the word disservice. I would
Oh,
use it as an intentional attack on
yeah,
their sense of well-being and their self-esteem.
right. It was just
That's far beyond a disservice.
yeah, it was. It was such a when I saw that, I cried. I cried for almost a week. It's like, look what has been done.
Yeah.
Look at the issues that other people got to think about and talk about and deal with, and look what we got fed.
Yeah. And, even if I look over the course of my lifetime,
Yeah,
as a population, we're getting the trajectory has not been to expansion and creation and becoming
no,
more of what you are capable of being. It
yep,
has been dumbing down, becoming more,
yep,
self-focused, more whiny, more,
yep,
it's just, it was like almost, we're just eating ourselves alive.
yeah.
We're
They
not we're not growing at all, or there's a portion
right,
of the population that is not growing.
that's true, and they really nurtured a lot of narcissistic kind of
Yes,
behavior.
yes.
Um, it's really
Okay,
sad.
but
So,
I have how many more do you have on the list? Because I have a question.
2, 2.
Okay, let's do the last 2, and then I'll ask my
Okay.
question.
So the more you unfold the self, the more you realize that this work is something that every individual must do for themselves. Nobody can do your perception for you. Nobody can do your consciousness for you. And the last one, the more you take responsibility for your perception and your consciousness, the more you enter into joy, peace of mind, and love, which are the first steps into the God state. So we're moving toward becoming gods, having powers, just moving up through the dimensions. That is, I cannot emphasize how important that is. So those are the steps and stages of becoming a new human, and they're very natural. When things go right, you get an amazing human being.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know what? This is what I want to talk about, and it has to do with the people that are watching right now who are going to watch this video.
Okay.
And I want to make a broader picture. There was a lot of people that wanted to incarnate on Earth at this time.
Okay.
And not everybody could come in, but some
Right.
people, clearly the ones that are here made it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be said that those who came and were able to came in fully equipped to make this transition
Yes.
really well? And so my point is that you wouldn't be here if you didn't have everything it takes and have an exceptional skill or an exceptional
Right.
abilities to make this transition, because that's why you're
Yep.
here.
That's right. And that is not talked about.
Yeah.
That's just swept under the covers, under the carpet, under the rug, again and again. We have such amazing abilities that I think that scares the crap out of the powers that want to be.
Yeah.
They don't want us to be even thinking, let alone using any power. And the power of consciousness is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's kind of a funny word to or funny way to present,
Right. Yeah.
consciousness can blow your mind. Consciousness is your mind. Yeah, it's one of those situations where when I look at what has happened and I look at the capacities that we could develop with, DNA responds to frequencies. What are we doing with these technologies whose frequencies just take us down again and again and again? Every single thing that has been engineered in our world for the last 200, 500 years is engineered at a certain frequency or frequency set that interferes with DNA development.
Yeah.
You develop the DNA. DNA is like a antenna, receiver, and transmitter. It's going to respond. And I tell people all the time, talk to your body. It's listening. And it will begin to become, because it responds. You're made of plasma. Plasma responds directly to consciousness. What do you want to develop? Talk to your body. Start talking, because it doesn't happen overnight. If it does, usually we get scared out of our wits and we drop it. It's like, oh, something happened. So, but eventually, we're multidimensional. We are multi-talented in terms of our abilities to heal, to see, to know, to understand, but all so much more. Oh my gosh, to travel to other places, to move things, without having to get a crane and big equipment. So, yeah, we have abilities, and we used to have them. You can see evidence everywhere on the planet.
Can I tell you a funny story
Yeah.
regarding that? I was watching Robert Edward Grant talking with a ancient historian that's talking about our real history.
Oh,
And they're musing over, these large blocks of stone. Like, how could that have happened? And I'm like, the ETs, the ETs. It's like, it's
right.
sitting right. Advanced civilizations, they know more than we do.
I
And
know.
it's exactly that. It's sitting right in front of us, and people are like, they're baffled. What could it
Yeah.
be? What could it be?
That's really a fine example of somebody who just cannot get out of the box at all.
It just
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
and okay, but here's the other thing is, when I look out at what the collective is talking about,
yeah.
I am stunned and amazed at how fast, Penny, it's unfolding.
Yeah.
I mean,
Ooh.
it's like a snowball going downhill right now.
Yeah,
I
it
think by
is.
December, everybody's gonna know everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of them are gonna say, "I did not wanna know that," but that's you need to know.
You need to
Um,
know.
yeah, we do. I think I'm looking at the events at the end this last quarter of the year going, "Oh, wow. Oh, wow." Um, and thinking, we so need this. I don't, you know, I don't want anybody to suffer, but we so need to have some kind of conclusion because of the stress level of so many people.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think that that's a huge factor, and I think that because it's been going on for so long,
yeah,
and people have had to learn to manage it,
yep,
that they don't even realize the degree of stress they're under.
yeah,
And I even find it in myself, and I'm, like, as chill as they come, you know?
yeah.
And I even notice it
Same
this
here. I
this
have to work at it sometimes.
yeah, it's like this underlying stress of that something's gonna happen or, something could happen, or this is not a safe place or something like that.
That's right.
It's manufactured, but
Yeah.
clearly because they pulled off a lot of things that, it's reasonable to feel that
It
stress.
is reasonable,
Yeah.
and to not be feeling that is gonna lead to a big shock if, when it all comes out that, there's been an awful lot of corruption, and
Oh my
some of
god.
it is ugly corruption,
I
ugly.
know, I know. It's just
Yeah,
it's gonna be hard for a lot of people.
yeah,
Really, really hard.
right. Yeah, I think so, and I think though that there's some of us are ready. Just today I was thinking, I had this thought, "I'm ready," you
Yeah.
know? And it was all the way through kind of readiness, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Now, a month ago, when my freezer died, and one of my big freezers died, and I lost a whole bunch of food, um,
Um,
meat and fruit and veggies, and milk. I had frozen milk. It just was like, "Oh, this is such a waste," and it's like, "Don't fall apart right now. I need to regroup here." But, I have regrouped, and my thought has been, "Okay, yeah, I'm ready, so whatever happens, I'll never be ready if anybody that I love gets sick or dies or whatever. That I don't know that I could be ready for that, but I'm ready for anything else, you
yeah,
know? I think I am."
yeah. What I suspect, and I think that you probably know some at least, is that there is so much being built behind the scenes
Oh, yeah,
that the true heroes and the true leaders of what is coming are people we don't even know
I
right now.
know. Yeah,
And once everybody becomes aware and the governments around the world can no longer function because there's zero support and they can't go out in public,
yeah,
and then all these guys and women, men and women that have been busy preparing the new systems and
yep,
in all different arenas
yeah.
come out, it's gonna be so fun.
There's some amazing technology that I see signs of it. I know that it exists. And there's a part of me that says, "Ooh, I'm not sure we're ready for that," but I want it. I think we can get ready.
Um,
And that I think that's a really critical piece. I do worry about losing people. The Deagle report. Did you ever see that report?
yeah, what's the latest on that?
They took it down because they didn't want anybody to see what they had put up, but somebody, copied it before they took it down and then reposted it just recently, and the loss of people in the United States was, only I read through the entire report, okay? So, other countries were gaining population. All of the countries in the West, the United States, um, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, UK, they were losing population big time. We lost, I think it was around 67%, something like that.
And
Other
what year was this?
next year.
Wow.
And that was not the worst. There Um, I can't remember if it was Spain or France, but other countries were losing. The lowest in the Western countries was a loss of 41% of their population. The highest was 73%. And I thought, whoa, that's huge. That's 3/4 of the population. And I don't know that that's really going to happen, but it's not looking very good right now in terms of health. That's the big thing. And food. As I was driving across the country and looking at thousands upon thousands of acres of corn and beans, soybeans, and a little bit of, a few other things, not much. Something I didn't recognize. It was like, oh, wow, something I don't recognize in terms of like big fields. I thought maybe it's sorghum or something like that. It had a flowering top on it. But anyway, what I realized was look at the thousands of acres of field corn and soybeans, and all of that is going into making processed food. None of that is for real food. And that was just like, well, okay, well, that needs to stop. I mean, I know they're feeding cows with some of it and pigs and chickens, etc. But we need to be growing a lot more wheat, a lot more veggies, a lot more greens, fruits. We have a lot here in West Michigan. We're second only to the West Coast, the San Fernando Valley. They are the number one. We even have more fruit than Florida. So fruits and vegetables, and we get a special premium price for our veggies because of what's called the bouquet. The bouquet of our fruits is astounding because the weather extremes are so pronounced. And when a plant has to produce chemistry that can handle 39 degrees and at the same time also handle 92 degrees, the chemistry becomes really complex and the flavor is off the charts. It's out of this world. So people pay more for Michigan fruit than they do for California or even Florida fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we, I look at, I don't know if we could really feed the whole country. We grow a lot. The fruit belt of Michigan is 40-mile wide strip all along the west coast of Michigan, all the way, top to bottom, and inland a little bit. But that is not enough to feed everybody, I don't think.
Well, if we have 33% of the population remaining,
it might be. It might be enough. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely won't be needing to make socks.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That really, I would really like to see more real food grown. I do know
Everyone
that.
would. Yeah,
Yeah.
except the corporations that make the GMO fake food.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah,
Penny, the
so
responsibility comes down to us. We keep buying it. Humans keep buying it.
that is true. That is true. But when I started changing my diet because I had to heal myself and I had to have real food, I couldn't buy any more sugared chemicals and call it food. That really required that I go out and see who was growing what and watch for little signs. We have farmers markets all over West Michigan. You go down to Arkansas or Wyoming or anywhere out west, and you don't see farmers markets on every corner.
Right.
So here we have that. So that was a big advantage. But in the long and short of it, as we change, if you change, like I said earlier, one little thing, start with one little thing. that ends up changing your entire paradigm.
Yeah.
And that's the paradigm shift that we want to make into 4D and 5D and beyond.
Yeah.
So,
You know,
yeah.
I fired my grocery store. I don't
Oh,
shop. I don't shop at a grocery store anymore.
yeah.
Everything I maybe get 1 or 2 things throughout the month. Everything else comes from other
I
sources.
go for detergent and, that kind of stuff. I'll
Mhm.
get, bananas. We don't grow bananas here in West Michigan,
Mhm.
but not a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, we've gapped for an hour and 10 minutes. Do you have any final
Oh,
thoughts tonight, Penny?
I think really and truly the thing that I would leave people with is begin to look into yourself and don't try to do it all at once. Look at your physical self. If you're pretty set and you're pretty comfortable, keep doing what you're doing. Look at your emotional self. If you're a basket case every other day, something's not right. If you're mentally upset all the time, you've got a set of beliefs that aren't very helpful. What is the basis? What is the decision at the root of those mental, this is the way life should be? Who said?
I know.
That's not the case. And
The
then
TV
spirit,
said. The TV
yeah.
said.
And then look at yourself spiritually. What kind of spirit for the future do you have? Hopefully, it's a lot of energy. Spirit is energy.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
you wouldn't be here if you didn't have everything it takes.
Yeah. You have everything and more. Just get it,
Mhm.
bring it out, get
Yeah.
it going.
Yeah, great.
So,
Well, Penny, thank you for another riveting conversation. I appreciate you so much.
okay. Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Oh my gosh. And thank you to everybody out there who's listening. Oh my gosh, it's really it's we're in the crucible right
We're in
now.
the final stretch, and it's gonna be fun.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Hang
right.
in there, guys. So,
Okay.
we'll see you next month.
All right.
Okay?
Bye, everyone.
Okay. All right.